Welcome to A Better Way to Do College, the podcast where we explore how higher education is evolving and what it means for access, opportunity in the communities we serve. I am your host, Dr. Stephen Gonzales, Chancellor of the Maricopa Community Colleges. Today we're talking about mentorship, the supportive relationships that help people find their footing, build confidence, and move forward. Mentorship can expand what's possible for an individual, and its impact can have a positive ripple effect across families, workplaces, and entire communities. To talk about this, our guest today is Dr. Kimberly Britt, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost of the Maricopa Community Colleges. Dr. Britt grew up in the foster care system, and the support she received from mentors helped guide her through her high school, into college, and onward into leadership. Ultimately, that support didn't just help her persist, it changed the arc of her life, leading her to now serve in one of the highest academic leadership roles in our district. In this conversation, we will explore mentorship at multiple levels, from the personal and the one-to-one to how Maricopa's 10 colleges make mentorship an integral part of our work. So let's explore a better way to do college. I want to welcome you. Throughout the podcast, my viewers may notice that sometimes I just refer to you as Britt.
That's what they call me.
And that's what you're known amongst the leadership circle. It has a very different command to it because I feel like I'm speaking to General Britt here when I say Britt. So Britt, today we're going to be talking about mentorship. And if you're anything like me along your journey from being a K-12 student going to college, and you've been an athlete as well, you've probably had at least one or two mentors along the way.
I have.
So why don't you talk to us, let the listeners know that how mentorship works, what it means to you when you hear the word. It tends to be something that's abstract. We don't know that mentoring is taking place when we see it, but what does it mean to you?
I think about great leaders when they talk about mentors, and Sir Isaac Newton said that when I look back on my life, when I look back on the things that I've done, I stand on the shoulders of greatness. Mm-hmm. And I think mentoring are people along the way who are ahead of you, their footsteps ahead, whether that be in their career, their life, trajectory, whatever phase or wherever you are in life. These are the people who are allowing us to stand on their shoulders and see further than we ever would have on our own. Mm-hmm. That lifting up. And sometimes they may help us look in a direction we wouldn't want to look, and that includes looking inward sometimes. And mentoring is really helping an individual grow, overcome hurdles, or find a path forward when they themselves are too close to the situation to see that.
Right.
And when I look back on my life, man, am I better off today because of the mentors that I had. Even though sometimes I didn't like what I was hearing, mm-hmm. It made me a better person.
Our students often think of a mentor as a single formal relationship, but as you and I know, it doesn't have to be formalized. Students, when I talk with students about my own journey and path, they often want to know, how do you find a mentor? How do you identify a mentor? How do you ask somebody to be your mentor? So what would you say to the student that asks you maybe those same questions?
A lot of times, what I offer is the best mentoring relationships occur through natural interactions. And sometimes we seek out mentors intentionally because someone is where we want to arrive. Maybe we want to finish a college degree for a student, and you've met someone who knows that path and they can help you navigate that path. Sometimes a mentor can be in a particular profession, but sometimes mentors can be people who help you navigate certain challenges that you're facing as an individual. Maybe it's depression or anxiety or grief. And we often forget that sometimes to master what we want to do in our careers, we have to master ourselves first. And so I think the first conversation that you have to have with the student is, where do you want to grow? Because that helps us find that mentor and or mentors, because often it is not, as you said, one single person or one single type of person. And making sure that there's someone that they are comfortable with and can be real and authentic with.
Is there ever a point in time when you think you may not need mentors anymore?
No. I think the time that you think you don't need any more mentoring, it's about time to retire. And I'll tell you why I say that. When we think we know everything and we've figured it out, that's when you're about to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So going back to students, whenever I give them advice on how to seek a mentor and how they should ask a mentor, I think that they're surprised that I still say, I still have mentors, but I'm still looking for mentors.
Yes.
At this point, I think I've honed it to just a few mentors that I can, call at any given time, and I know I can get some sound advice from them. But as you mentioned in our opening here, or in response to one of the questions that we asked, sometimes mentors aren't always nice, maybe nice, or maybe forget about the fact that sometimes they just got to come across just straight, give it straight to you, right?
The best mentor will do that for you.
Right. So I think in the definition of a mentor, it's someone who's not afraid to just be very real with you.
That's right.
And however they do that, it doesn't need to be someone that's going to be disrespectful or yelling in your face.
No.
They've got to not be afraid to jeopardize maybe the relationship to give you honest, good advice, right?
And good mentees are willing to receive that as well.
I think that's what's really important. So I want to shift a little bit to talk about the mentee perspective, because in many ways it may be easy to ask someone to be your mentor, but how do you be a mentee?
I think to be a good mentee, you have to be very clear about what your goals are. Mm-hmm. You also have to be very honest with yourself about where do you need to grow. Because mentors, their job is to really help you grow and develop, and you have to have a clear indication of what that is. And I can give you many stories in my life where that's been the case, but a good mentor is going to help build, loosely called, a growth plan or a growth journey based on what your needs are as a mentee. So you have to have some idea of what you want out of the relationship, if it's a formal one. And if it's someone that you're calling, as you become more established, as you're navigating tough decisions or critical milestones, whether you're leading an organization as complex as this, then you have to be secure enough sometimes, as we've talked about, to hear things that you might not like. And that requires a certain amount of strength and growth. Sure. And so that's kind of more of the advanced mentoring phase. But for our young students or young professionals who are beginning on their journey, I think it's important to know about, where do you want to go? Where do you need the most growth to help that mentor to understand? So
sometimes people think that student success is only about working hard, but we know that mentorship can play a role in that. It isn't often spelled out in the syllabus how a student should approach that. What advice would you give a student who's looking to use mentorship as a way of helping his or her levels of student success improve?
Yeah, it's very true. One of the data points that I found at Phoenix College early on in my journey was that the average GPA of a graduate was around 3.2. The average GPA of a student who withdrew was around 3.1.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it is.
And so we know that life happened, whether that was financial or, caring for parents or children or trying to balance work and life. But I often wonder how much of that had to do with some form of imposter syndrome, where students had just been told all of their lives, this isn't for you. And so much of student success is believing that you can. I often say, when I spent 16 years in the classroom as an English professor, as I began this career, that I was a lousy professor, but I was a great inspirer. And that's probably not, that's an extreme to say I was lousy. I certainly was not, but I spent a lot of my time convincing students that they could write and that they were going to be great writers. And I think for our students and student success, that half of the battle is actually believing that you can. And I think that's true for anything in life.
Course.
And, you know, I have a mentor who certainly convinced me of that. And it's no different for our students.
Yep.
It's not the only thing, but it is a big, big thing. And so student success is connecting students, whether that is with a faculty or a community member or a student affairs professional who's getting in the head of those vulnerable students and convincing them that they can.
There is a study out there that shows that when a student goes to college, 95% of their time that they spend in their entire college experience will be with a professor in the classroom. Now, I use that as a broad definition today. True. And you've just said that faculty have a great opportunity to be mentors, whether they know it or not. But it's a great opportunity. Yeah. And you and I have been faculty members for a long time, and we've seen the power of that. You've done a lot of cool things in Maricopa. I'm going to tell you, I think one of the coolest things you've done is create Britt's Bears. And that just touches me in my heart in a way that it really tells me who you are as a person and what you really care for at the end of the day. So here's a chance to tell the viewers and listeners about Britt's Bears.
So I was in the Virginia system. I was always called to be the keynote speaker, either at the kickoff for our foster youth across the state of Virginia. We'd bring them to Richmond, Virginia, and we'd have a big system kickoff to get them going and motivated. Or at the end of the year, we'd have a graduation ceremony, and I would be the commencement speaker. We'd had senators, governors, vice presidential candidates who attended this thing. It was a big to-do. I was always very nervous because of the people there. But it's where I began to tell my story. And so I was either the opener or the closer for the year. And some years I was the opener, and then 2 years later I was the closer. I couldn't get to my car often when I was the closer from students who would come up to me and say, I've never forgotten what you said when I first started. And it might be 2 years, it might be 3 years, but they never forgot what I would say to them. And I was a vice president at the time. And I didn't understand the power of my walk and what it meant to other foster youth, that having sat in their seat where they were with all of the imposter syndrome and overcoming the hurdles, they would just hug me and they would cry. And I'm like literally trying to get in my car. They would chase me through the parking lot. And I realized the power of having overcome and having made it. And I decided that if I ever became a college president, I would stand up a formal mentoring support program for foster youth at the college where I was a president. So I began the second day of my presidency. I started raising money for a program called Britt's Bears. Our mascot is a bear. And it was for foster youth who were enrolled at Phoenix College. And the idea was to raise money so I could take them to special events. We've been to the Phoenix Suns. We went to an ice hockey game when we had an ice hockey team in Phoenix. Museum and different things, and I would have lunch with them. The goal was 3 times a semester at the beginning, the middle, and the end. But it was about mentoring.
Which is that's awesome, Britt, that you, as a college president, you're an extremely busy person, but you've carved out time
for them
and energy for them. Here's what I think is really cool about that too, is that you started to have students who weren't going to Phoenix College ask if they could be a part of Britt's Bears. And what did you say?
I said, absolutely. I had a student take an Uber from Glendale all the way over to the Phoenix Suns to join us. And it just meant that much to them. And so it became kind of a district-wide event. And so, yes, the more the merrier. We did cover her Uber charge, by the way. I
don't know that a lot of people understand that when kids are in foster care, there are the state, someone at the state, some agency is looking out for their well-being, but as soon as they turn 18, what happens?
Well, they may be on their own. They may be fortunate that they've had a long-term foster parent who's there cheering them on, but a lot of them truly are on their own, and they need that extra support. So many of them just don't have that person who's, like we do with our kids. How's it going? This exam is hard. You've got this. And they just need that little extra support, that person who believes in them, and I wanted to share with you the person who did that for me when I was in college, who was my Brit's bear. I was his Brit's bear, and that was my coach, because this changed who I was. So I decided in college, I had all of my tuition covered, all of my scholarships, loans, and everything was covered. But the cross-country team needed a walk-on, and I decided I could do it. And it came with a $2,000 a semester scholarship. So I was literally running for the money. And they gave me a piece of paper, you got to be able to do all these things, meet these times. So I walked onto the cross-country team and pocketed that $2,000. That's what I used to buy shampoo and go to the movies and do other things that kids did. And they would release it to me every month, a certain amount over 4 or 5 months. And I met a man named Jim Settle. And so I started running, and that was my coach, and became the most powerful mentor in my life. And we're like in the first week of training when things get really hard. I don't care what you've done over the summer. First week of practice is hell. And I'm sitting on a sidewalk like this, and he's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, I feel like somebody beat me with a baseball bat. And I was just whining. And he goes, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow." And I was just really wanting a little sympathy here.
Right.
And about 3 weeks into training, I'm the anchor, which is a nice way of saying I'm the slowest one on the team. But I still needed to be the fastest anchor of all the teams that we were competing with. And he said, "I need you to pick it up. I need you to run faster." Flowers, my last name is Flowers. And I said, "But you don't understand. I'm not as good as they are. And they've not been through what I've been through in my life." I had tears streaming down my face at this point because he was really pushing me. And I said, "I'm not good. They've not had the hell beat out of them. Their mom hasn't choked them and called them names. And they haven't had all these things." I ran through all of the horrible things that had happened in my life. And he had tears streaming down his face, just tears. And he looked at me and he said, "You know what? You're right. They haven't been through what you've been through. But you make a choice today. Do you want to continue being a victim? Because if you want to be a victim to the things that happen to you, those things will control you for the rest of your life. And you'll never be great at anything you want to do. Or you make a decision to be a survivor and let yourself be free from all of that. And the moment you do that, you control your destiny. You control who you think you can be around and who you can't, and how good you will be."
Wow.
And just like he told me, you get what you settle for. Within 4 weeks, I had knocked 4 minutes off of my mile time. I was running a sub 6-minute mile in 4 weeks.
Wow, that's impressive.
He turned me from a victim mentality, and he convinced me that I was as good as anybody else, that I was worthy, and that I could control my outcome. And I think that's what good mentors do, is they make you look in a mirror and say, "Quit your whining. You control where you want to go." And he really taught me, because look, my physical ability to run didn't change in 4 weeks. My mental ability changed. And like I was talking about with students, what great teachers do is they get in their heads and they convince them that they can be great.
That's right.
I've done this with Phoenix College. I tell them all the time, I convinced you you were great. You became great at what you do. And I think that's what good leadership and good mentoring is about kind of getting in people's heads and making them look at themselves. And helping them believe in themselves, holding them up on your shoulders, and getting them to see where they can go. And he did that for me. And he continues to do it for me in many situations where I get stuck.
That's amazing. You've taken some, past scenarios and situations and things that have happened to you, and you've proven to be the survivor that you described that you are. You've also done that in a way of describing the importance of having mentors along the way. So with that, I'd like to thank you for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you.
And I want to give you the opportunity for the listeners out there to give any final words of wisdom to your colleagues across Maricopa and any students or folks in the community. What's the last thing you'd like to leave with?
I think I'd say to all of those who are watching this, who have an opportunity to mentor our students or mentor newbies to Maricopa who are finding their way, to listen to the things that we've talked about and the power of mentoring. We have several leadership programs in Maricopa where those of us can now, who've found our way, can be those shoulders for others and help them. That's what makes us all great. It makes us all better. It requires a time commitment. I have 3 or 4 mentees this semester, but it's worth it. It makes the organization better. And then what you get in return is powerful as well.
Well said. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Britt. Best wishes to you
Thank
moving
you.
forward.